Luke take it away and teach you all about branding and culture.
All right, I'm excited to be here. So as Erica said, I'm the Director of Inbound Marketing at Savvy Panda, and we are coming out of the land of beer and brats, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And our agency excites change using inbound marketing and website development. I'm also the head instructor of Master Inbound, which is an online inbound marketing course. And so I'm going to apologize a little bit in advance because we have a lot to cover, so I'm going to be moving pretty quickly. But like Erica said, it is going to be recorded, and you can always hit me up after for any questions that you might have. So I want to start with a question. What is branding? Okay, and you can tweet it out on the hashtag. We got our eyes on the hashtag, the Mozinar hashtag. But is branding a logo? Is branding a tagline? Is it the fonts or colors that your company uses? Well, these are definitely important for sure. These don't necessarily explain why cult-like followers of Harley-Davidson literally tattoo corporate logos on their bodies, or how they're able to get over 200,000 people to ride their Harleys literally across international borders, coming as far away as Chile and Mexico to their every 5-year events. It doesn't explain why brands like the Green Bay Packers are able to create such a deep connection with their fans that they're literally fighting to get their hands on season tickets, which has an average of a 110-year wait to get on top of the list. So if a logo and the colors and the fonts don't elicit this type of response, what does? And how can we, as marketers, take this knowledge and apply it to our own businesses and be able to build that type of loyalty? Well, over the next 45 minutes, we're going to work to uncover exactly that. And so I invite you, my friends, to join me as we dive into building a branding culture that attracts advocates and creates social movements. So I find that so many marketers and businesses have such a misconception of what branding is. It's not only about choosing your brand's logos and typeface. You know, these elements are important for sure, like I said, but before you get to this point, you need to lay the foundation on which you can build the rest of your brand on top of. Which we need to take a step back and first answer the question, what is a brand? You know, I hear a lot of things a lot of times about that a brand is an organization that's involved in the trade of goods and services, has a unique selling proposition, and has some sort of audience. You know, and while this statement is correct, how is that any different than what a business is? And if it isn't any different, does that make a business and a brand the same thing? If we look at the energy drink market, there's such brands such as Rockstar, Red Bull, who can charge a premium for their product. And then there's the generic non-branded brands. So if Red Bull, an energy drink, just like all the generic energy drinks, fits within our previous definition of a brand, how can you explain the fact that they can charge 30% more than the generic energy drinks? Well, the answer is because a brand and a business indeed are different. So you may be asking, what is a brand? Well, brand is nothing more than an idea of achieving a better world for either your customers or for the world as a whole. Red Bull doesn't sell an energy drink. It sells an idea, a cause, a purpose, to empower people and ideas and give them wings to take off and achieve amazing things. Harley-Davidson doesn't sell motorcycles. They sell a means to which an individual can fulfill their dreams of personal freedom. They sell an expression of that individual's lifestyle. The people that buy Harley-Davidson buy it because it's a statement of who they are and what they believe in. And the second that you know someone rides a Harley-Davidson, you immediately get a window and a piece of who that person is. The problem is so many businesses either don't have a central idea of what they're trying to achieve and what impact they're making in this world, or they do a very poor job of bringing that through in their marketing. And instead, they focus on things like, we have the best price and we do the best quality work, which are indeed important factors, but they don't breed that type of emotion that we're looking for in our brand. Okay, so if a brand is an idea, then what is branding? Branding is the process of encapsulating that idea into an experience that your audience can connect with. When they're experiencing it, they're experiencing an emotion. And as you work to build your brand, it's your goal to build and strengthen that emotional connection you have with your audience with your core idea. and the core values that drive your brand. It's all about making an emotional connection every single time at every single touch point, no matter how big or... And before we start, I want to mention that this emotion that we're trying to create with your brand can be very difficult and subtle to detect. And so I need you to do a quick, we're going to do a quick mental check of your conscious emotions, feelings, and thoughts that you experiencing it. And then we're going to see what kind of emotion brings on by each one of these logos I show. Okay, so Apple. Those who believe in Apple's idea of challenging the status quo and thinking differently might smile a little bit, right, inside when they see this. But then the other half of the room, the people that don't believe what they believe, you know, your heart rate might climb a little bit. You go, oh, those Apple people, we don't like them. Roger. If you're paying attention, your body probably smiled a little bit when you saw Roger. After all, this is a brand that we're pretty connected with. And after all, everyone loves Roger. Obama. Okay, this is a brand. And there's a good chance that you're probably feeling some pretty strong emotions about this brand right now. This emotional connection that you're feeling is exactly what we're trying to establish with our branding. But in our case, let's hope that there's some positive feedback. And Reese's, I think, at least when I saw this, my taste buds kind of reacted a little bit. I think Reese's is America's #1 Halloween candy. So I thought it was pretty fitting after the Halloween season. If you're like me, you probably ate a good number of these and you had these top of mind. Okay, but one key takeaway from this experiment is that the emotion and experience and connection really depends on the individual and whether you believe in the idea of why that brand exists. And it's important for a brand to brand around a certain group of people and not to brand around everyone. There's no way to build emotional connections between your brand and everyone in this world. If you're trying to do this, there's a good chance you're probably going to fail. But for those who believe in why your brand idea, those are the people that are going to become true believers in your core audience. So going back to the question, what is branding? Branding is really all about the emotions that you experience whenever you're in contact with a brand. And our goal as marketers is to bring that emotion through every single time. Okay, so how do we create this feeling in an individual? How do we do this? We're going to have to learn this by diving into a bit of biology. So we have essentially 3 parts in our brains. We have our rational brain, or our neocortex, which you can see in purple here. We have our emotional brain, or limbic system, which you see in green. And then we have our primal brain, or reptilian brain, which you see in red. So the rational brain is our most recent brain, our Homo sapien brain, and is the new addition which sets us apart from chimpanzee friends. The neocortex is in charge of all of our language, our long-term thinking, and our goal setting. It also controls our rational thinking and analytical thought. So in your marketing, when you speak to facts and figures or quantity or price, this is the part of the brain that's going to react. Now the emotional side of the brain, or the limbic brain, is buried within the cerebellum. This is the part of the brain that controls all the different emotions, from primitive emotions to human emotions. It's not able to process analytical thought or language. It does consist of the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland, which controls all of our behaviors. So this is the area of the brain that controls emotions and behaviors, which is the exact area that we want to target as marketers. And the third, reptilian brain, sits way in the back of our brain. This is the part of the brain that controls all your body's subconscious behaviors, such as breathing, heart rate, temperature, fight or flight, and reproduction. It's basically everything that's essential to our survival on this planet. So if our goal with branding is to evoke certain emotions with individuals, and our brand-related messaging needs to target precisely to the limbic brain, as I would say that this Gatorade ad does a really effective job of, for those of you who are paying attention to our little biology lesson, what is the problem with this? Well, the problem is the limbic brain doesn't understand analytical thought or language. So how are we going to create this messaging that activates the limbic system if it doesn't understand that? Well, it's a good question, and honestly, it's not easy, and that's one of the reasons that there's only been a very few number of brands that have created that type of emotion and type of connection. But as much of a puzzle as this is, we're in luck. There's a guy that you may be familiar with who's cracked this puzzle and has created one of the most simple methods for guiding your brand and creating a strong emotional connection. While researching why some marketing works and why some does not, Simon Sinek stumbled upon this concept of the golden circle, which correlates precisely with the way our brain thinks. For those who haven't seen the golden circle before, we're going to take a second, we're going to break this down a little bit. So why? This is where all the great leaders and great brands start with their messaging. This is the idea that your brand is trying to champion behind. What greater good are you trying to achieve in this world? Why do you get out of bed in the morning, and what greater purpose are you trying to serve? And this is where your brand needs to start with all of its messaging. So as mentioned earlier, Red Bull does a phenomenal job of this, and this is exactly why they're such a dominant brand. So let's take a look at their Stratosphere campaign. Red Bull championed this project because at its core, this project represented exactly why their brand exists, what their idea they're trying to champion was. It was a monumentous idea that they wanted to make possible, and the gross amount of publicity that they received as a byproduct of this simply reinforced that idea into all of our heads. So to further prove this point, throughout the entire jump, from the time it took off to the time Felix landed, not a single can of Red Bull or energy drink was seen or even mentioned. And this is because the project had nothing to do with selling energy drinks. It had to do with why Red Bull exists and what idea they were trying to champion. And this wasn't incidental. This was planned. This is a screenshot that you see from their About Us page. And one of the first things they do is state why their brand exists and the idea that they're backing. And on a side note, I'd go to that URL after this and check it out. They have an awesome About page that I think a lot of us could model after. And Lego's marketing department understands this concept as well and does a phenomenal job of bringing this brand core idea across and the purpose across in all of their advertising. Lego doesn't sell warrior ship sets or Star Wars sets or even plastic blocks. What Lego champions behind is the pursuit of sparking human creativity and imagination. Let's take a look at a few B2B examples. So MailChimp. This is their About Us page. Right on their About Us page, they list that we listen hard and we change fast. It has nothing to do with email. It has to do with listening to their audience and adapting accordingly. And that's why they vowed that every single week they're going to announce a new feature. Okay, and again, they have a really good About page. I would recommend taking some time to check it out. And lastly, we're going to take a look at another B2B example, our friends at HubSpot. And in all their marketing they do, they never start off by talking about their platform or their different features. It's all about their messaging always starts with the reason that HubSpot exists, and that's to empower marketers to create marketing that people love. They even spell it out right at the front of their homepage. So let's take a step back. How do we figure out why your business exists? Well, you really can't figure this out by taking a look at the future on where you want to be. Rather, you need to look back at where your brand started and the reason that it started, and see maybe even before where it started, how all those things came to play. And when you boil it down and get to the core of what your brand does, 99% of the time this should not be industry specific. You shouldn't mention any of your products or your benefits. You need to ask yourself, if your industry disappeared tomorrow, would you be able to continue that same idea in another industry? And if the answer is no, you need to keep digging deeper. So it's only until after we've established why our brand exists that we're able to branch off and explain how you're going to achieve this. So if we look at the how, these are the guiding principles and the benefits that your company brings to bring your brand's idea to life. These are the concepts like your culture, your core beliefs, your unique selling proposition, and your differentiating proposition. I want you to think of your company's how as a filter or a lens on which you can base all of your business decisions off of. Most of the good marketers start with their branding at the how level. The great marketers start with the why level. And VW does a great job of breaking this down on how their brand operates. These aren't simply marketing gimmicks. These are guiding principles and frameworks of how they make business decisions around their brand. Their entire team has a crystal clear understanding of these. They can make decisions easier and keep moving in the right direction. Another great piece on Red Bull's About Us page are these programs that they've created. And these are how they go to achieve their idea of giving wings to people and ideas. Because all of these programs align so well, it reinforces the brand's core idea with their audiences and builds that emotional connection with them. Okay, and the last piece of this is the what. What does your company do? And these are the tangible, real-world things. These are, after it's been filtered through your how do you bring your why to life? These are your products, your services. These are your features and benefits. You know, in branding, these are things we think of color. We think of fonts. That's where these start to play. Now, I'm not going to spend a whole ton of time on this because I think everyone is crystal clear on what their company makes. And it's the clearest thing for us to understand. But if we take a look at VW, they're the tangible proof. The tangible proof of their brand's idea are their cars. These items are the things that people buy and show off and show the world if they believe in what the idea that VW is trying to champion. You know, for Moz, it's a little bit different. We buy their software, but the problem with that is that it's something that we're not able to show who we are and who we believe in to the public. So what we do is we attend these webinars, we read their blogs, we watch their whiteboards, and we share that content out with the world. That's how we show that we believe in what Moz believes. So I'm going to close this section off by giving a key tip that you can take away on your site, and that's in regards to the messaging that you can have. If we take a look at Google's About Us page, this is the exact order that you need to communicate in on your website. At the top, they start with their brand's idea, and then back it up with powerful imagery that reinforces that idea. Then they follow that up with how they're going to achieve it, and eventually, you know, they get to their what's. You know, what are their products and services that you use? And lastly, I want you to keep in mind that this shouldn't only be communicated on your About Us page. Rather, this should be permeating through everything you do in your communications. Okay, and additionally, it's not the hardest thing to figure out why you do what you do. It's hard to consistently act on it and bring it across through your entire organization, from advertising to customer service to sales. But when you do, you are able to make those deep emotional connections that these true brands are able to create. So out of the 32 teams in the NFL, the historic Green Bay Packers are the only publicly traded team. The Packers have only sold stock 4 times in their entire 94-year history, and their latest sale of their stock sold for $200 per share, way higher than a lot of the publicly traded companies. Yet despite the fact that the Packers have never promised to ever pay dividends to their stockholders, they sold all the stock out immediately. And if that doesn't speak loud enough, the Packers have Packer bars literally in every major city in the U.S. and all over the world, including Shanghai, Cambodia, Sydney. And they have one of the longest waits of any team for season tickets. People wait 110 years to get a chance to get season tickets. So how are they able to do this? Well, they're able to do this because the Packers have such a rich history, but do such a good job of bringing that history across in their branding and in their organization. They're very clear on why they exist, to be devoted to the fan experience. And they bring this through on all their marketing and all their messaging. And people want to be a part of it, right? They want to be a part of history of an organization that they believe in so much. They want to help shape the history for that organization. People want to be a part of something bigger than they are. And so how is this any different than what we're trying to create with your brand? And so the next critical piece of this is creating an emotional connection through storytelling of your journey of your brand. Okay, so in both Dan and Chip Heath's book, Made to Stick, and Jonah Berger's book, Contagious, along with many other publications, they all cite that telling stories is one of the greatest ways that we can connect with someone and make our ideas memorable and shareable. But somewhere along the way, we as marketers, we use technology to create this digital wall. We decided that we no longer wanted to tell our audience anything about who we were, where we came from, or what our organization's purpose is that we're trying to achieve. And so if you look at a typical About Us page, a company page, in this case, I actually give Microsoft some props that they actually have made an attempt to put their mission on there, although how accurate it is to Bill Gates' original reason for starting Microsoft is a little bit debatable. But the rest of the page really does nothing to tell Microsoft's story and where they came from. And they're not alone. I mean, this is the majority of the websites that we see on the web. We create these About Us pages that tell our audience zero context about who the company is and what journey they're on. And this leaves the user at the page feeling no more emotionally connected, and in some cases even less connected with our brand. They feel like our brand is cold, like we're a soulless entity, and there's no way for us building these types of pages to ever connect with humans and with our brand. But rest assured, not all brands are in this boat. There are some brands who are doing an exceptional job of bringing across their brand story. And here's a few examples. So SC Johnson does an awesome job of showing who are the people that have been leading this company over the 12 decades. What are their story? How did they start? You know, have you ever thought about how SC Johnson started? It started as a wood flooring company and expanded from there. And they've actually showcased real people from their company on their About Us page. Johnny Cupcakes is another example. They're probably one of the premier street clothing brands out of Boston. And they're an awesome example of not only the storytelling, but branding in general. I definitely check them out. They're just johnnycupcakes.com. And if you click their logo on their website, instead of just going to their homepage again, their website actually drops down and it tells a story, a narrative about how the brand started and where they're going. So again, this is another great example of where you're telling that story in a very fun and visual way to your audience. Okay, Zendesk. Here's a B2B example. Okay, they're in the customer service software industry, which is not the most exciting topic in the world, right? They're not in that exciting of an industry, but yet they have a timeline. They show where they really have started from and where they're going. And they have this really cool where they show their CEO top tweets by category. And so it gives you kind of a window into their CEO and shows a little more transparency and personality behind their brand. So I think part of this, if you're working within a more boring industry, when you look at it, you could still create a brand that's meaningful. If you look at Zendesk, or even Moz, like it's just software. Zendesk is a customer service software. Moz is an analytics software. It's nothing too exciting, but yet we don't see these organizations as boring, right? We see them as pretty exciting organizations, and I think it's because of their branding, right? So even if you work in a boring industry, it doesn't mean that your brand has to be boring. Okay, so how do we share our journey? Well, first off, you want to start off by how did you get here? Okay, why did your organization start in the first place, and how did you get to where you are today? And like I said, I don't care if you're in a boring industry. If you dig deep enough, you have an intriguing story behind your brand. I guarantee it. Okay, we're going to leverage things like pictures and videos. They do an amazing job of bringing these stories across. We as human beings, we love seeing the faces of other people. That helps establish that emotional connection that we want to have with them. You know, there are so many nonverbal communication cues that we give, and by simply just doing it with copywriting, we're losing a lot of that communication. And that's one of the reasons that video has been shown to be so powerful to speaking to our emotions and speaking to our limbic brains. And so that's the part that we really need to keep in mind, is how can we speak to the limbic brain. Okay, we need to share our team. We have to tell who's involved, what are some of the people that are doing some of the great things within our organization. And I can't tell you how many businesses just completely don't show who they are, even the owner or any of their team members on their About Us page, right? These are the people that are directly impacting and communicating with your customers. We need to show who they are. And, you know, I get some feedback from time to time that, you know, our business is too small, or I really don't want to show off who the individuals are. But in reality, if you're not showing who you are, you're really not being authentic, and it's going to be pretty hard to establish a good amount of trust with your audience at that point, or at least you'll have a little more of an obstacle. Okay, and the other thing is I recommend building it into your process. Like, how can you tell your story through different processes that you do? So for an example, at Savvy Panda, we spend the first 2 minutes of every interview, when we interview potential employees, explaining who we are and where we came from. And we do this also with every potential lead that we start communicating with and we start talking to. We explain who we are.